After I gave my CEO wife back to my brother, I dropped the charade with the family business on the brink of collapse. I took my brother's place in an arranged marriage to the Kensington family after he fled the country. I thought sincerity could win anything, but to Victoria Kensington, I was nothing more than a mark of shame. A useless freeloader who depends on a woman for everything, thinks he's entitled to feelings. You're not even worthy of shining your brother's shoes. For 3 years, I took care of her with everything I had, just hoping she would finally accept me. It wasn't until I saw her at my brother's welcome home dinner, secretly drugging his drink, that I knew it was time to wake up. I signed the divorce papers she'd had ready for years. The housekeeper, Mrs. Davis, blocked my way with a smirk. "Running away now that you're broke?" The missus said, "If you dare step out that door today, you won't see another cent of your allowance." I pulled out my phone and made a call. "Grandfather, you made me play the part of a poor man for 3 years. Now, I finally understand why. 1, it's good that you understand. Come home." My grandfather said only one sentence, but it was the only comfort I had in that moment. The housekeeper, Mrs. Davis, stood with her arms crossed, a look of pure mockery on her face. She had clearly overheard my call. Done with the performance? Playing poor? Grandfather? She pursed her lips, her tone dripping with condescension. "The grass on your sick mother's grave has been growing for years. Where did this grandfather suddenly pop out from? A dream?" I didn't have the energy to argue. I grabbed my suitcase and started to leave. Mrs. Davis feigned concern, blocking my path again. Her voice was like someone offering a handout to a beggar. "Leo, think this through. The second you walk out that door, you'll have nothing to do with Kensington Corp ever again." I met her gaze, my voice calm. "Mrs. Davis, you've worked hard these past 3 years, too." She frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing," I said, pulling my suitcase toward the door. "It just reminds me of what you told me 3 years ago when I first married into this family." She looked at me, confused, clearly having no memory of it. "You said, a smart man knows which side his bread is buttered on." I stopped and looked back at her. "I admit it now. You were right." Her expression shifted. My mind flashed back to the wager I'd made with my grandfather 3 years ago. "Leo, you insist on taking your brother's place and marrying into the Kensington family. You say it's to save Morgan Industries, but the truth is you're in love with Victoria Kensington. I won't stop you. After all, a man can only see people for who they truly are when he has nothing. When you lose, perhaps then you'll be worthy of inheriting my legacy." I had sworn to him, "Grandfather, I believe in Victoria. I'm going to win." Win? Thinking back on it now, it was a joke. "Leo, stop pretending." Mrs. Davis's voice turned shrill when she saw my resolve. "If you really had some powerful backer, would you have put up with this abuse for 3 years?" I didn't answer. I walked out into the downpour, letting the rain soak me to the bone. She yelled after me, her voice tight with anger. "Fine, be stubborn. I'd like to see how far you get without a penny to your name. Don't come crying back to me in the middle of the night, begging me to let you in." The heavy gates of the estate closed behind me with a dead thud. From that moment on, it was 2 different worlds. A sharp, cramping pain shot through my stomach. It was an old problem, a parting gift from 3 years of eating the cold leftovers Victoria left for me. She never allowed me at the dinner table. The pain was so intense, I could barely stand. Finally, the headlights of an Uber cut through the rain. "The nearest hospital, please," I gasped, curling up in the back seat. The driver glanced at me in the rearview mirror. "Rough night, kid? Why are you out alone in a storm like this?" I gave a bitter smile. There's no room for me at home anymore. Outside the window, the city lights blurred into streaks of color. I had no interest in looking, but a single glance made my blood run cold. It was Victoria's car. As our cars passed, for a split second, I saw her in the back seat, holding my brother, Ethan, who was clearly drunk. I couldn't help but laugh. For 3 years, she'd never once checked on me, not even when I was delirious with a fever. But my brother? She treated him like a priceless treasure. The tender way she cared for him was a gentleness I wouldn't have dared to even dream of. The rain hammered against the car window, blurring my vision, but the memories only became sharper. It was a cold, rainy night, just like this when a Morgan family business went bankrupt. The crushing debt triggered my father's heart attack, and my brother, unable to handle the pressure, fled the country. My grandfather, still resentful over my mother's choices, refused to help. I knelt outside the Kensington estate, begging them to honor the marriage contract. But even as my knees bled, they all pretended not to see me. Then Victoria returned. She sat in her car, rolling the window down just enough to toss out an umbrella and a coat. "Don't die on my doorstep. It's bad luck." The window slid shut, leaving me clutching the coat that still held the warmth of her body. Pathetic. They were cruel words, yet I had deluded myself into thinking it was a sign of tenderness hidden beneath a cold exterior. I was such a fool. Thank God it was all over. In the hospital hallway, the spot on my arm where the 4 had been was still numb. Suddenly, I heard a familiar voice. "Ethan, how are you feeling? Does it still hurt?" Speak of the devil. I had run into them again. I looked up and saw Victoria carefully helping a drunk Ethan walk. A doctor was instructing them nearby. "You two look like a married couple. Remember to be moderate in your activities. You can't take too much of that drug at once." So that was it. "Victoria, how desperate could you be? I once accidentally brushed your hand, and you would seize any opportunity to humiliate me, calling me disgusting." "Dr. Martin," Victoria hadn't finished her explanation before she saw me. To my surprise, she looked flustered, her face turning red. But just as quickly, she regained her usual arrogant composure. She pulled a few bills from her wallet and threw them at my feet. "Go home by yourself after you're done." I stared at the cash, remembering the umbrella she had thrown at me 3 years ago. "No, thanks." I forced myself to stand up straight, ignoring the pain in my stomach and the money on the floor. "Leo, don't push it," Victoria said with a frown. Between the pain in my gut and the ache in my heart, I didn't know what else to say. As I turned to leave, I heard her voice behind me. "Putting on an act? Without me, you couldn't even afford to walk into a hospital." When Victoria got home, she realized Leo was truly gone, but was certain he'd come crawling back once the money ran out. "Let him go. Pride doesn't put food on the table. He'll be back in 2 days, tail between his legs, begging me to take him back." Mrs. Davis immediately chimed in. "You're right, ma'am. He can't pull a fast one on you with his pathetic little tricks." Victoria waved a dismissive hand, her frustration mounting as she picked up a financial report from the table. Her expression darkened. Ethan wrapped his arms around her from behind, his voice smooth. "Victoria, are the old suits on the board giving you trouble again?" "Ethan, all the bank loans have been poured into the new project, but we still can't crack the core technology. If this drags on any longer..." Victoria couldn't bring herself to finish, leaning wearily into his embrace. This project was critical. If it failed, the board would crucify her. "It won't fail," Ethan said, his voice brimming with a confidence that suggested he had everything under control. "Victoria, I've already made contact with Obsidian Dynamics. I'll go with you tomorrow, and we'll secure the partnership." "Really?" The words hit Victoria like a lightning bolt. 3 overjoyed. Her lips moved a few times before she found her voice. "Ethan, thank you." Obsidian Dynamics was a legend in the industry. If she landed a deal with them, her position at Kensington Corp would be untouchable. Ethan's hand slid under Victoria's shirt, a place Leo hadn't been allowed to touch in 3 years. He whispered in her ear, "It was my mistake to go abroad. From now on, Victoria, you're my woman and my woman only." Victoria bit her lip, trembling from the sensation. "Ethan, I've always been yours. As for Leo, the sight of him makes me sick. My little brother is a good kid, just a bit too jealous. Don't hold it against him." Ethan stroked her gently. "After all, he's lived his entire life in my shadow. Hold against him? Is he even worthy?" Victoria immediately took out her phone. With a thrill of vengeful pleasure, she texted, "Leo, you have 3 days to come back and apologize, or I'm freezing all your cards." When I received Victoria's cold, heartless text, I felt nothing at all. I dialed a number. A steady, respectful voice answered on the other end. "Mr. Morgan, you've finally decided to return. Kensington Corp is weak right now. They need a partner with us at Obsidian to survive. By the way, my team mentioned that Ethan Morgan already made initial contact with him yesterday." "Ethan Morgan?" My tone was so indifferent he might as well have been a stranger, not my brother. Just a dog who only knows how to run. He thinks he can come back here and bark orders just because he made a few connections overseas. "Mr. Morgan, should we accept his partnership proposal?" "Of course," I said, looking out the window with a smirk. but I'm the one who decides how this show is going to be played. After the 4 drip that day, the doctor suggested I get a full workup with a GI specialist. In the exam room, the doctor in the white coat did a double take when she saw me. Now, she picked up the chart from her desk, then looked me over again, her eyes filled with a mix of uncertainty and a hidden spark of delight. Have we met somewhere before? I racked my brain, but came up blank. For the last 3 years, my world had been pitifully small. I don't think so. Dr. Jenkins, you must be mistaken. She didn't press the issue, smiling as she began asking about my symptoms. After writing out a prescription, she said softly, I remember now. I looked at her, puzzled. It was right here, 3 years ago. A little girl was getting a shot and was screaming her head off. Her mom couldn't calm her down, and the nurse was losing her patience. Dr. Jenkins's eyes softened. You happened to be walking by. You took the syringe from the nurse and told the little girl that the needle was a brave little soldier and the syringe was a spaceship. It needed to go into her body to fight the bad germs that make people sick, but it needed her cooperation to complete the mission. The memory came back to me in a flash. My father's condition had worsened that day, and I had just finished paying his medical bills. I was exhausted, physically and emotionally. Seeing the little girl, I acted on some strange impulse and walked over. To me, it was just a trivial moment. The little girl actually stopped crying. She held out her arm and said she wanted to help the little soldier complete his mission. Dr. Jenkins smiled. My attending had just chewed me out that day. What you did, it was the first time I felt like there was something truly meaningful about studying medicine. She looked at me with pure admiration and curiosity in her eyes. I wanted to get to know you afterward, but you disappeared before I had the chance. For Leo, have the last 3 years been good to you? Dr. Jenkins's question was like the needle for the little girl, piercing my heart. Someone remembered me. Just then my phone buzzed. It was Victoria again. I take back what I said. Get your ass back here and apologize. Now, the chilling words stood in absurd contrast to the genuine warmth in Sarah's eyes. I blocked Victoria's number without a second thought. Dr. Jenkins, let's not talk about the past. I placed my phone face down on the desk. Right now, I'm just a patient. Thank you for your help. The partnership meeting between Kensington Corp and Obsidian Dynamics went ahead as planned. Ethan Morgan, full of himself, presented the technical proposal he'd brought back from overseas. Victoria watched him with eyes full of adoration. Members of the board, this proposal will revolutionize the industry landscape. Ethan stood at the podium, his suit impeccable, his gestures elegant and confident. A partnership between Obsidian and Kensington is inevitable. Before the applause could start, a single, cold laugh cut through the room from the back. Inevitable? Based on something you fished out of my trash, 3 years ago. Every head in the room turned. I stood up from my seat in the last row and walked through the crowd, straight toward the stage. Now, Victoria was stunned and deeply embarrassed to see me in such a setting. What are you doing here? Security. Get him out of here. Ethan tried to maintain his composure. Come on, little brother. Don't cause a scene. If you need money, just ask me. This isn't the place for you. I ignored them both, swapping out Ethan's laptop for my own. What do you think you're doing? Ethan moved to stop me, but Obsidian's chief technology officer suddenly put a hand out, blocking his way. I projected 2 sets of code side by side on a large screen. On the left, we have Mr. Morgan's pride and joy, his overseas technology. On the right, we have my rough draft from 3 years ago. I pointed to a specific line on the screen. You even copied the deliberate error I left in it. Brother, your copy and paste skills have certainly improved more than your technical abilities. A wave of murmurs and gasps went through the tech experts in the room. Ethan's face turned a deep shade of purple. He stammered, You're lying. This is slander. Slander? A mocking smile touched my lips. I quickly typed a stress test command and hit enter. On the big screen, the demonstration system for Ethan's proposal instantly froze, followed by a cascade of bright red error codes. Silence. The entire room was dead silent. The color drained from Victoria's face. You're the one who's truly useless, I said casually, pulling my hands back from the keyboard. Ethan was in a full-blown panic. Say what you want about the tech, but I'm an external director for the Ethelred Industries Group in Europe. If Obsidian wants to enter the European market, they have no choice but to go through me. He held up his employment contract like a drowning man clinging to a piece of driftwood. Victoria latched onto this as well, her voice sharp. That's right. Leo, you're a jobless loser. What do you know about international resources? All you know are these pathetic, underhanded tricks. Ethelred Industries. I laughed, a sound that made their blood run cold. In front of everyone, I made a video call from my laptop and projected it onto the screen. The call was answered instantly. A vigorous, white-haired older man appeared. Now, it's been 3 years. I thought you'd forgotten all about me. Have you finally decided to come be our chief technology officer? The old man's voice was loud and enthusiastic. Ethan looked like he'd been turned to stone. I smiled calmly. Not just yet. I have a question for you. Do you have an external director at your company named Ethan Morgan? The man on the screen burst out laughing. Director? Oh, you mean the young Chinese fellow who brought me those gifts? What? Is he running around passing off a chicken feather as a royal decree? Did he try to pull a fast one on you? Gifts? I asked, feigning curiosity. What kind of gifts? Ethan's face was no longer just pale. It was the color of ash. He trembled, his lips moving. No, don't say it, Peter answered cheerfully from the screen. He said he was returning to his country, so he left all dozen or so of his mistresses to me. Now, you must come visit sometime, and I'll let you enjoy. Before he could finish, Victoria's hand trembled so violently she dropped her glass, shattering it on the floor. I ended the video call and closed my laptop. Ethan, a position bought with women? That's some high-quality work experience you've got there. The humiliation of the bidding conference was a thorn that had lodged itself deep in Victoria's soul, and I was the one twisting it, driving it deeper inch by inch. Obsidian's assault on the market was swift and ruthless, leaving Kensington Corp with no room to breathe. Inside the Kensington building, the atmosphere was so tense you could wring water from it. How could this be happening? Victoria slammed a report showing the plummeting stock price on her desk, her perfect makeup unable to hide her haggard state. She whipped around to face Ethan, her pent-up resentment finally exploding. While you were off enjoying yourself overseas, did you ever think this day would come? Ethan, a dozen mistresses. Did you think I was dead? Ethan's expression was even uglier than hers, but he didn't lash out. Instead, he put on a look of someone who had been deeply wounded. Mistresses? He let out a self-deprecating laugh, his voice choked with emotion. Victoria, if I had truly fallen for someone else, I would have found just one. But I found so many precisely because none of them were you. Not a single one. I was just desperately searching for a shadow of you in them. Don't you understand? This utterly absurd defense left Victoria stunned. Seeing his chance, Ethan grabbed her by the shoulders. Every single moment, I wanted nothing more than to come back to you. But I had to be out there, paving the way for our future. Those women, they're not even worthy of being compared to a single strand of your hair. You're the only one in my heart, Victoria. Victoria's anger began to crumble without warning. Her proud, foolish mind filtered out all the illogical parts of his speech, hearing only what she desperately wanted to hear. Ethan loves her more than anyone. Her gaze softened, and her voice grew thick. I believe you, but Kensington Corp, it's going to be destroyed. Ethan was silent for a long time before he looked up, his eyes bloodshot. Victoria, there's one other way. I've contacted the new CEO of Obsidian Dynamics. He wants to see you. See me? Victoria grasped at the lifeline. Alone. At his hotel. Ethan's voice was strained. He said that if you spend one night with him, everything is on the table. The air in the room turned to ice. Victoria slapped him across the face. Ethan, you want me to sell myself? Do you think I'm one of those cheap whores you played with overseas? Ethan didn't flinch. The stinging pain on his cheek was nothing compared to the agony in his expression. He suddenly grabbed his hair, screaming, Do you think I want this? Do you think it's easy for me to say this? You are the woman I love most in this world, and I have to personally send you to another man's bed. 6. Victoria, you only have to give up your body, but what about me? You have no idea how much this is killing me. This twisted, manipulative tirade was the final blow that shattered Victoria's remaining sanity. Her body went limp. She collapsed onto the sofa, staring blankly at the ceiling as she muttered, Fine, I'll go. Meanwhile, in the CEO's office at Obsidian Dynamics, I was looking out at the city skyline when a sharp pain shot through my stomach, making me wince. Skipping meals again? Sarah's voice came from behind me. She placed a carefully prepared container of food on my desk. I brought your stomach medicine, too. Eat something first. What are you doing here? I looked into her clear eyes, unable to hide my surprise and delight. I was just passing by and thought I'd check on my most disobedient patient, Sarah said with a smile, handing me the pills and a bottle of water. Work is endless, but you only get one life. I obediently took the medicine, and the burning in my stomach subsided. Just then, my assistant called. Mr. Morgan, we have word from Kensington Corp. Tomorrow night, 8 o'clock, the presidential suite at the St. Regis. The lights in the hallway outside the presidential suite at the St. Regis were cold and sterile. Ethan pressed a small box into Victoria's icy hand. She looked down at it, and her body began to shake uncontrollably. Victoria, I'm so sorry you have to do this. Ethan's voice was thick with a deliberately suppressed anguish. He pulled her into an embrace. Don't worry, I won't think any less of you. This is for our future. Once Kensington Corp pulls through this, I'll do whatever you want. Victoria let him hold her, her body numb. She clutched the small box so tightly her nails dug in her palm. She couldn't say anything, only nod. Ethan planted a kiss on her forehead, then let her go and walked away, his posture suggesting a great and noble sacrifice. Dressed in a long black dress, Victoria stood alone at the door. She took several deep breaths before finally pushing it open. The room was lit by a single, warm floor lamp. A man was sitting in an office chair with his back to her. His silhouette was vaguely familiar. "Hello, I'm Victoria Kensington," she said, her voice trembling slightly as she tried to sound composed. "Ms. Kensington, a pleasure." The man's voice was deep and magnetic, with an undertone of amusement. To think the formidable CEO of Kensington Corp would see a day like this. Victoria bit her lip, saying nothing. For the company, she had already sacrificed her pride. "Come here," the man said simply. Victoria hesitated for a moment before slowly walking toward him. "Stop," the man said suddenly. "Take off your clothes." Victoria froze. "Can't we discuss the partnership first?" "Discuss what?" The man chuckled. "Do you really think you are in any position to negotiate with me?" Victoria closed her eyes, her hands shaking as she unzipped her dress. The black fabric pooled at her feet. She bit her lip, a fog of tears forming in her eyes. "Was I not clear? Take off your clothes." The man's commanding tone left no room for argument. Tears streamed down her face, and she bit her lip until it bled. Victoria gave in completely. "Turn around. On your knees. Hands behind your back." Each command was like a whip lashing at her pride. She had imagined business failure countless times, but never a humiliation like this. "All right, game over." The man finally stood up and slowly walked toward her. Victoria looked up, and when she saw the familiar face, the blood drained from hers. "Now!" Her voice was a piercing shriek. "It's you." I watched her look of terror, a grim satisfaction rising within me. "What, are you surprised?" My voice returned to its normal tone. "Ms. Kensington, your performance was quite memorable." "You're insane." Victoria scrambled to pick up her clothes, screaming hysterically. "This is a crime. I'm calling the police." "A crime?" I raised an eyebrow. "I haven't done a single thing. You, on the other hand, came to a hotel to meet a man of your own free will. What would you call that?" Victoria dialed 911, her voice shaking violently. "Police? I want to report a crime." Someone, she trailed off, unable to continue. Because it was true. I hadn't touched her. At the police precinct, Victoria sat in a chair, her face as white as a sheet. "Miss Kensington, Mr. Morgan did not commit any form of physical assault against you," the officer said calmly. "On the contrary, you should probably listen to the evidence Mr. Morgan has provided." I took out my phone and played a recording. "Mr. Henderson, you're close with the new CEO of Obsidian, right? I hear he's still single. Victoria Kensington has a killer body. As long as he guarantees my shares in Kensington Corp, I promise I can convince her." Ethan's voice filled the room, undeniably clear. The expressions on the faces of everyone in the room shifted. Victoria stared blankly into space, listening to the recording. Her face was a ghastly gray under the fluorescent lights. "If there's nothing else, I'll be going," I said, standing up and straightening my jacket. Ms. Kensington, the game is over. The collapse of Kensington Corp was swift and total. Feeling guilty, Ethan chose the most idiotic path forward: corporate espionage. To prove his love for Victoria, he personally broke into a company I was backing, trying to steal core data. He had no idea he was walking right into a trap I'd set for him. In a security room, I watched the familiar figure on the screen rummaging through an office. "Mr. Morgan, should we call the police now?" my assistant asked tentatively. "Not yet. Let him steal." On camera, Ethan displayed a breathtaking level of professionalism. He wore a mask and gloves, careful not to leave a shred of evidence. Unfortunately, his intellect didn't match his caution. Our cameras had automatic iris scanning capabilities. "Sir, don't you think he'll find it all a little too easy?" I laughed. He couldn't even spot the deliberate error I left in my code 3 years ago. You expect him to have the foresight for that now. Soon, it was time for Kensington Corp's last-ditch product launch. Victoria and Ethan were prepared to unveil their improved new technology. On stage, Victoria wore a white power suit, attempting to reclaim her former glory. Ethan stood beside her, his own suit sharp, his eyes gleaming with ambition. "Ladies and gentlemen, today we will be showcasing a revolutionary technological breakthrough. Please direct your attention to the main screen." Victoria's voice was crisp, but a careful listener could detect a slight tremor. I sat in the back row of the audience. This farce was about to end. Well, if it isn't my brother Ethan," I said, standing up. My voice wasn't loud, but in the quiet auditorium, it was perfectly clear. "Burning the midnight oil, are we?" The room erupted. Reporters raised their cameras. The big screen wasn't displaying a tech presentation. It was playing a high-definition recording of Ethan's entire break-in. 8 on the screen, Ethan was prying open a safe, his focus and dedication worthy of a professional thief. The color drained from Ethan's face. He pointed at the screen and stammered, "Teach, that's not me." "Not you." I walked slowly toward the stage. "Brother, do iris scan comparisons make mistakes now?" "Look, they got your good side," I said, pointing at the screen before turning back to the audience. "Ladies and gentlemen, this man's technical skills are truly remarkable. 3 minutes to pick the lock, 5 minutes to find the files, 10 minutes to photograph everything. All done in complete silence. A new industry benchmark." A wave of derisive laughter rippled through the crowd. "Too bad it was all junk," I said with a shake of my head. "Those files were obsolete. Just like your acting. Ms. Kensington, is this the great man you admired so much?" I asked, looking at Victoria's ashen face. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. "No, it's not like that," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I just smiled and said nothing more. A moment later, police officers entered and escorted Ethan off the stage. Victoria remained frozen, trapped in the glare of 1,000 camera flashes. She had never felt so utterly alone and helpless. With the dust settled, I sat exhausted in my car. Sarah called. She didn't ask about what happened. She just said, softly, "I'm downstairs. I brought you some of your favorite takeout." Ethan was sent to prison, and Kensington Corp was forced into bankruptcy and liquidation. Overnight, Victoria went from the untouchable Ms. Kensington to a debt-ridden civilian. She sold off all her luxury goods and was unceremoniously evicted from her mansion. The designer bags and couture gowns were now just cheap goods on second-hand market websites. When Ethan heard about Victoria's situation from inside prison, he managed to contact some of his loyal cronies and plot a twisted act of revenge. Their target wasn't me. It was Sarah. If Leo destroyed my woman, then I'll destroy his. Ethan seethed in his cell, a sick light in his eyes. That afternoon, Sarah had just finished her shift at the hospital. She was walking home, carrying a container of dinner she'd made for me. She had no idea that a large truck was waiting for her around a corner. Maybe it was a premonition, but I felt restless and agitated all day as I tried to review documents in my office. Finally, I canceled all my meetings and drove to the hospital to see her. I arrived just in time to see the truck careen out of control, heading straight for Sarah. In that split second, instinct took over. I floored it, ramming my car into the side of the truck and sending it swerving away from her. The sound of the impact was deafening. My own car flipped over, the frame twisting into an unrecognizable wreck. Smoke poured from the engine, and shards of glass were embedded in my arms and legs, blood streaming from the wounds. I didn't care. I clawed my way out of the mangled driver's seat and staggered towards Sarah. She stared at me, covered in blood. She reached out to wipe my face, but her hand was shaking too much. "You idiot," she choked out. A crowd was gathering. People were taking pictures, recording videos. I held Sarah in my arms, listening to the distant wail of an ambulance. A profound sense of peace washed over me. In that moment, I understood that all my plans for revenge were worth less than a single moment of protecting her. In a hospital bed, Sarah carefully cleaned my wounds. Her touch was feather-light, terrified of causing me more pain. We were talking quietly when the door to my room was pushed open. It was Victoria. She was wearing a faded, worn-out jacket. She had no makeup on, and her face was gaunt. She looked nothing like the powerful CEO she once was. Her eyes fell on the bandages covering my body, then shifted to Sarah, who was gently tending to me. She froze in the doorway, her expression a complex mixture of emotions. Sarah stood up. "Ms. Kensington," she asked, her tone polite. "Can I help you?" Victoria's gaze went past Sarah to me. Her lips moved, and when she finally spoke, her voice was raw and hoarse. "Leo, what Ethan did, I just found out." I leaned back against the pillows, not even bothering to look up. I turned to Sarah. "Sarah, I'm in the mood for some tomato soup tonight." Sarah smiled. "Okay, I'll make it for you as soon as we get home." Our casual conversation was like an invisible needle, pricking at Victoria's pride. She was being completely ignored. She finally broke, taking 2 steps forward, her voice pleading. "I was wrong. Now, I truly know I was wrong now. Please, I'm begging you, give me a chance to survive." Only then did I look at her, my expression as if I were looking at a complete stranger. Victoria began to tremble, and tears streamed down her face without warning. She dropped to her knees with a thud. "I'll kowtow to you. Leo, I'll beg on my knees. Isn't that enough?" Sarah frowned and moved to help her up. I stopped her with a single look. I looked down at the kneeling Victoria and spoke, my words clear and precise. "Save the drama. I'm not getting revenge on you. The market eliminated Kensington Corp. It's called capitalism, understand? As for whether you live or die, that stopped being my concern a long time ago." With that, I picked up an apple from the bedside table and handed it to Sarah. "Peel this for me." Victoria remained kneeling on the floor, all the strength drained from her body. It seemed my words had hurt her more than if I had simply destroyed her. Ethan and his accomplices received extended sentences for conspiracy to commit murder. On the day of the sentencing, I sat in the courtroom gallery and watched as the man who was once my proud brother was led away in handcuffs. He looked back at me once, his eyes filled with a chilling, venomous hatred. I felt nothing but a sense of release. The whole ridiculous drama was finally over. A year later, Sarah and I were married on a private island in the Grenadines. The wedding was simple and intimate, with only our closest family and friends. My grandfather beamed as he placed Sarah's hand in mine. "This girl is 100 times more reliable than any of your dysfunctional relatives," he said with a laugh. Sarah chuckled, patting his arm. "Grandfather, you shouldn't say things like that. He's not wrong," I interjected. "My grandfather has always been a ruthless judge of character." Grandfather grunted. "Good to see you finally wised up." Halfway through the reception, an old college friend, Mike Johnson, came over with a glass of champagne and leaned in. "Hey, have you heard what Victoria Kensington is up to these days?" I glanced at him but didn't reply. Mike continued enthusiastically. "I heard she's working as a clerk at a public library branch in Queens. Can you even picture it?" "Not interested," I said flatly. "Man, you're no fun," Mike said, shaking his head. I passed by there last month and saw her from a distance. She's quiet, reserved, a completely different person from that arrogant CEO. Hearing this, my expression didn't change. I simply turned and gently adjusted Sarah's veil. Mike started to say something else, but I shot him a look that silenced him. He got the hint and walked away. Sarah sensed something. "What was that about?" she asked softly. "Nothing important," I said, taking her hand. "Today, you're the only thing that's important." A blush colored her cheeks, and her eyes sparkled with happiness. I looked into Sarah's eyes and saw my entire world, my entire future. The sun filtered through the palm fronds, making her look like an angel. The guests began to cheer, demanding a kiss. I leaned down and kissed her lips as our friends and family erupted in applause and whistles. "That's too tame, groom," someone shouted from the crowd. "Yeah, give us another one." We both laughed. A fleeting thought of Victoria crossed my mind. True strength isn't found in crushing those weaker than you. It's found in protecting what's precious and finding peace in your own heart. I pulled my new bride closer, accepting the blessings of everyone under the warm sun. Sarah whispered in my ear, "Leo, thank you for showing me what true love is." A wave of warmth washed over me. In the entire world, what could possibly be more valuable than this?